Order the September 3rd, 2025 Planning Agency meeting. Everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening we have one applicant on the agenda and then approval of minutes. Do we have a representative for the applicant?
Good evening. Joel, thank you for putting it on the screen. I did bring a larger copy in case you needed it. And I did bring just 11 by 17 in case that was easier for the commission. I have it in front of you. With me, and good evening, Rob Lewis, Captain Stewart, attorney for the applicant. With me this evening is Marty Eustace of Eustace Engineering, our civil engineer for the project. Before the Planning Commission this evening is the property known as 300 Lee Drive. My client, EVB Towing, is the equitable owner of that property. And as I think a couple of us talked about earlier tonight, EVB Towing owns the adjacent property. On the screen you can see some of the wrecks and things that they deal with. I know that my client has owned this property for a few years now, but I do still remember this as the Faulkner collision site. That was what it always was to me, but that's what they own. And they have a very active towing and recovery business there, actually have contracts for the Turnpike and I think even for Plymouth Township, been very active in the community. We're here to talk about our application to the Zoning Hearing Board, and I'll just jump right into it. The property itself is a little bit more than 3 acres of currently undeveloped ground located in what is commonly known as Plymouth Meeting Park. As you probably know, Plymouth Meeting Park is an industrial park that has kind of an array of different users. There are currently 2 hotels in that park. There's a self-storage facility, and in the rear is the former IMS building. That's actually now owned by another client of mine called Alliance, and they have converted much of that space into smaller warehouse type spaces. They've been making some improvements for loading facilities and so forth, and we understand that they either have just signed or are about to sign a lease with Donnelly Heating and Cooling as a headquarters for them. So you can imagine they'll have a lot of those box trucks that you see around in that vicinity. I think there are currently about 3 total undeveloped lots remaining in that park. Depends on the screen or on the exhibit that I provided to you. There's kind of an island in the middle, and the number of lots within the island has changed over time. The former owners had changed some lot lines and what have you. One of the hotels is within that island, and the remaining ground has at different times been 1 lot, different times been 2 lots. But there's about 3 lots total within that park that remain undeveloped. Lot 3, which is 300 Lee Drive, was at one point, I believe, approved for a hotel. Probably the last thing we need again in Plymouth is more hotels. And my client purchased it, because he owned the adjoining property, thinking at some point if his business model changes or expands, it would be convenient certainly to have the property next door. But also he and his partners own several pieces of ground, industrially zoned pieces of ground that they lease out, and that's their proposal here for this property. The property is zoned limited industrial, as are all of the surrounding properties. If you spend any time over there on Gallagher, Gravers, Davis, any of the surrounding roads, you'll notice there is quite the mix of uses back there because they are industrial properties. Everything from some very large landscaping companies along the Turnpike with storage of all their bulk materials and what have you. There's now, I think it's Gebert, who has roll-off trailers stored out there. But then you have Jim Kilduff owns a couple of buildings that have office space within them, and I think there's even now a proposal for a sports facility in one of those locations. So a wide mix of users. Lee Drive is private. It's a private road. It is not a public road. It is to be maintained and improved by the owners within the community. My clients are proposing really to level grade out Lot 3 to make it available as a contractor's yard. And in total, when they grade it out, they will have to put in some retaining walls. There are some slopes. They'll be able to achieve about a 75,000 square foot level gravel area for the storage of equipment and materials. As you can see on the plan, the proposal is for very substantial landscaping, a fenced-in facility, and 2 access points to Lee Drive. The proposal also proposes full stormwater management for the site. None obviously exists today. It's undeveloped, but full stormwater compliant with the code would be installed on the site. We had initially submitted to the township a grading plan for the site that was reviewed by Mr. Manai and Mr. Woodrow's offices. And in fact, we received review letters back from them. But during that review process, the question came up as to whether or not the use as a contractor's yard with no building associated with it, whether or not that was a permitted use. And in June, Mr. Rowe issued a determination that it was not a permitted use under the LI district regulations. Initially, we actually appealed that determination, and our application also included the alternative request for a variance. On August 4th, we appeared before Township Council to discuss the matter, had a very productive conversation, and subsequent to that meeting, by letter dated August 12th, we actually amended our application to withdraw the appeal piece of the application and simply relying on our request for a variance to permit the use. In general, our position has not changed. Our presentation to the Zoning Hearing Board will still be that we believe that the proposed use is consistent with the intent of the limited industrial district and that the use is consistent with many of the surrounding uses in that it will have no greater impact on those surrounding businesses than many of the otherwise already permitted uses. You could have manufacturing and some other pretty intense uses. This will not be that. My client intends to lease the space to a contractor, and really the concept here is they have a lot of inquiries already and are under an LOI for a company called JK Steel, and we're hopeful that that will get to an agreement and a lease. But JK Steel, for example, is a large steel fabricating company, a manufacturing company. They do everything from large metal tubing to sheet pilings, very large pieces of steel. And what they need and what their idea here is those large pieces of steel, once they manufacture them elsewhere, they need a place to store them before they deliver them to customers. And so that's the kind of user you're looking for here, a tenant that has large equipment or large pieces of material that really are inefficient to even store in a building. And so having an outdoor space for the storage of that is really what they're looking for. And we've had a number of inquiries right now that JK Steel is what we believe will come to contract. It's important, I think, also for the Planning Commission to note, I think I had mentioned it in terms of talking about adjacent users and owners. I represent a number and have over the years a number of the other users within the park. I represented the hotel immediately adjacent, the Springwood Inn and Suites. When this application was filed, I reached out to them, made them aware of the application, and they have no objection to this use being next door. Their only request was to make sure that at planting, that the landscaping is planted at 8 feet in height, just to give them a little added protection there. but otherwise had no objection. I likewise spoke with Alliance, made them aware. Donnelly Heating and Cooling is actually also contracted with EVB Towing for repair of their fleet vehicles. So there was a synergy of relationships there, and Alliance likewise has no objection to this use in the park. I did not get any response actually from the self-storage facility. I represented the original developer, but they have since sold that to a national. In my contact there, I couldn't get in touch with them. But I thought it was important to note for the Planning Commission and for ultimately the Zoning Hearing Board that we have in fact talked to our neighbors and there is no objection to this use. It is consistent really with what you would typically see in a limited industrial zoning district. In the end, we think it will be a productive use of this ground, low impact use, private roads. So in terms of, if trucks are bringing in large pieces of equipment, what have you, it's on private roads. Other users within the park and within the area already bring heavy trucks, usually up Gallagher. If you get off 476 or the Turnpike, most are heading down Chemical around Gallagher to get to this location. So it's currently already used for that purpose. So don't know if the Planning Commission has any questions for us. We're happy to field them and answer any questions you might have.
Neil?
Why are you using gravel? Gravel instead of paving?
I'll let Marty address it from an engineering standpoint. From the ownership perspective, certainly it's much less expensive to maintain if you're having large equipment on that. Large equipment tears up asphalt very quickly, and you would just be constant. It would either be in a state of disrepair or it would have to be repaired and replaced regularly. There may be an engineering perspective as well.
Actually, there's not. You pretty much described the reasoning behind it to a T. As Rob said, it's a little easier to maintain the cost impact. Not only that, but should there ever be a change in plan in the future to put a building on, it's just easier to and cost efficient to make those modifications.
Marty, from a stormwater perspective, gravel is still considered impervious, correct?
That's correct. So we're modeling this per DEP and the township's guidelines. What should also be noted, this basin is in addition to the regional basin that is part of the overall park. So there's added protection, meaning that when the park was developed and designed, the regional basin, which is what I would call southeast of this exhibit, accounted for the full development of all the parcels, meaning 70% impervious coverage. So instead of just utilizing that basin, we were talking with the township engineer. We thought that this would be added protection. So we're going through the design process to meet today's requirements with that lot being fully independent.
And we will require, because of the size of the property, we will require full NPDES permitting from the county for our stormwater facilities.
The only question I had, would it affect any of the businesses if you're shutting down that road, or?
We don't believe so. Certainly not during construction. It will be a standard grading such as anybody has done when they've developed their independent lots. And from a use perspective, tend to be a low volume. These people our tenants that we're looking at are lower volume users. But that was why I also wanted to reach out, particularly with the hotel next door. Do you see this as a nuisance? Do you see it as something that will impact your occupancy rates? And they had no objection to it being next door.
Just an overview. The biggest thing is visual. Technically, by definition, every definition I've looked up for a laydown area is a temporary facility. PennDOT has laydown areas when they're doing construction, and then that equipment's there for 6 months to a year, and then it's gone. Okay, so I think that, and it's not very appealing the way they usually leave. And I think part of the concern is just keeping some uniformity. I think with the buffer you have in place, that's going to go a long way in that
It is. I can discuss that with you if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought this was one of the parcels, we had restrictions when we did the subdivision years
Correct.
ago because of the soil was contaminated.
Yeah, there's contaminated soil underneath, and actually there's contaminated over at the Metroplex as well, that whole area. And the remediation that was originally done by Peter Cross for the original subdivision, they put down they found where the contaminated soil was. They put down a liner, and then had to put a cap on the liner. And I forget how deep that is, but a certain number of feet. And part of the mistake, I guess, rumors, what have you about that liner. It's not a traditional liner that's intended to keep the two things separated. It is actually a liner that's really just a demarcation, so that if you were to be digging down, you would know, hey, you're about to enter the contaminated soils and you have to deal with whatever that involves. Obviously, with this type of use, none of that. We're not getting anywhere near that. If anything, we're actually adding fill and retaining walls for the facility. Our stormwater will be above that liner.
Supposedly restrictions on height of buildings,
Yeah,
depth of the foundations.
correct. And I believe for years there was also a limitation that everything had to be slab on grade. You couldn't dig down and put a basement facility in. And I know we ran into some of that with building the Springwood Suites Hotel, because a hotel like that, you might, on suspect soils, your initial response would be to put pilings in. And you weren't supposed to put pilings in because that creates perforations in that liner and the potential for contamination. So again, this does not have any of those impacts at this point. But to your point, aesthetics are definitely important here. It is visible from the turnpike. And what we do want to point out is, despite the fact that there are obviously vehicles that have been wrecked that are on site here, there is screening of those vehicles from the park. But my client, Kevin Bowe, owns the adjacent property, and his shop, if you've ever been to his shop, is a very clean facility within their operations. He's not selling this property. He intends to hold on to it. So you're going to have the owner immediately adjacent all day, every day. He still works there. So I do think that encourages it to remain in a better condition than if somebody was selling it to a tenant and just letting it go.
And that's pretty much screening, setbacks, and visual is my concern at that point. And I think we can address those, even though Kevin, he owns both, he has the opportunity to sell the parcel, he can sell at any time.
He could.
It's still, that way. But, no, that's okay.
Is there any lighting or security going in?
The only proposed security is the fencing, and we are not proposing any lighting. It will depend on the tenant. With somebody like J.K. Steel, nobody can steal that. Nobody can take that off site. The equipment is too large, or the materials are too large. I think that'll be tenant driven. If the tenant happened to have something, say they had bobcats or something that they needed to store that somebody could potentially try and throw on a trailer and take away, they're probably going to install their own security to make sure. But we're not adverse to doing something to make sure that it remains secure and doesn't become kind of an attractive nuisance where somebody says, oh, let's see what's in the yard today. But we will be fencing it. It will be gated. And then it'll depend on the tenant's needs at that point.
What's the fencing in the back towards ABB now? Is it going to be complete fencing, or there'll be no gates, no access back and forth?
Correct.
Trying to prevent overflow of storage in what proceeds to be a junkyard type
And
flowing into this space.
yeah, and
I know he owns both, so he can go right in the front gate as well, but
there's a grade separation between the two lots, so that will help prevent that. But no, there are no gates. And we actually talked about this a little bit at council. EVB towing technically is a non-conforming use. It is not permitted. That use is not permitted in the limited industrial district, but it predated the limited industrial district, so it remains. So if Kevin wants ever to expand his use onto this lot, we need to seek zoning approval to do that. So he can't just all of a sudden say, hey, I've got a 75,000 square foot yard over there, I'm just going to start using it. That would not be permitted by the zoning ordinance. He would have to seek relief to do that, so.
No comment. Any comments from the audience? Hearing no comments from the audience, do we have a motion on the table? I'm going to make a motion that be in favor of the use variance, as I'm, with the gate in the back, I'm fine, and knowing that he can't spill over, so as requested, I'm in favor of putting the motion forward. Do we have a second?
Second.
And second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? 4-0. Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Go.
Thank you.
Go Birds.
Moving to the minutes, does anybody have any comments on the August minutes that were distributed?
See you, Joel.
All it was a vote of the minutes from the previous. There was no applicant last month. Hearing no, no objections, I'll put a motion forward to approve the minutes from last month. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anything else, Joel? Anything else, members? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.
Nice trip to Sweet.